We all feel them. The forbidden, the sinful, the taboo. Behaviors that divide cultures and inspire fear. But our differences may be what make us all human.
Few taboos divide societies as fiercely as those that swirl around the use of drugs.
They destroy your insides, they affect your brain.
I'd like to see God on drugs, and I have.
Drug dealers should be executed as murderers.
Certainly drugs have real effects, so the question is going to be, what is the way of controlling those effects? Fearing citizens will abuse them, many governments ban certain drugs. And yet others cherish these substances as essential to their core traditions. In this hour, climb high into the Peruvian Andes, whose residents have long believed that a hallucinogen called San Pedro can mend broken lives. Sample the rave culture in Washington, D.C., where possession of a synthetic hallucinogen dubbed ecstasy can draw a prison sentence, which doesn't stop users from experimenting with the drug's capacity to dissolve social barriers. Accompany Mexican Indians who have special permission to ingest the peyote cactus in a ritual the faithful believe brings them face to face with their God. And wonder for what benefits and at what price would you try a mind-altering drug? Huancabamba, Peru. People here have a history of using folk medicines. Traditions that have helped expand understanding of asthma, diabetes, and other conditions. But no drug is without risk. Even here, experimentation has a price.
These red spots, when did they get here? Since a week ago?
Dr. Felix Ruiz straddles two worlds, modern medicine and local tradition. After using a local plant as a remedy, this patient developed a rash.
Here in Huancabamba, we have people who are still rooted in their old beliefs in traditional medicine. And they trust it a little more.
After years of cases like this, Dr. Ruiz came to oppose drug experimentation until a fatal accident shattered his life. He received an emergency call. The ambulance was rocketing across town when a child chasing a stray marble ran into the street. The driver couldn't stop. His truck crushed the boy.
Her death was instantaneous.
Worse, Dr. Ruiz and the child were related.
When I got down and was able to verify that the boy was my nephew, it really affected me.
His nephew's death destroyed the doctor's life.
I had nightmares, weeping, anguish. I had headaches, pains in my neck, pressure on my chest, and my breathing was agitated.
Psychiatrists couldn't help. In desperation, he went to the mountains, hoping to find relief in a drug ritual. Peru permits limited use of the substance, but many societies would outlaw it entirely. Dr. Ruiz drank a soup made of a cactus called San Pedro. The brew causes hallucinations, visions many Peruvians believe can change lives.
The images came and exploded or burst in my face, and another image would appear after that, another image, and another.
By plunging into the San Pedro experience, Dr. Ruiz regained control of his life.
I started to sleep peacefully. I no longer had the nightmares. I no longer sweated at night. I slept normally.
Once an opponent of drug experimentation, this physician is now a believer in the healing power of San Pedro-induced visions. Twice each week, crowds make the pilgrimage that salvaged Dr. Ruiz's life. Some travel hundreds of miles. At the lakes of Las Huarengas, they act out a rite some societies might condemn.
When we talk about moral judgments, we're simply talking about the landscape of our own taboos.
Carolyn Marvin is a communications professor at the University of Pennsylvania.
We're assuming that other people's moral judgments are not as worthy, and this is the way that we say we're special people, we're the best people, we're the way that it ought to be.
But inside other cultures, the logic works in a quite different way because their taboos are not our taboos.
In Peru, the only taboo against San Pedro is taking the drug on your own. Custom dictates a collective experience, guided by a shaman. He requires that the pilgrims cleanse themselves.
Here we've come to get rid of jealousy and bad luck. Here we remember our men. Here we leave our bad luck and bad health of our bodies.
And the reason it is guided is because the drug can be a demon or an angel.
Marshall Blonsky is a semiologist at New York University.
It's guided because of the necessity for community. The community as a whole, not isolated individuals, take the drug.
The pilgrims have brought symbols of their problems.
This is the altar. These are objects that have energy for curing. And what they're taking out are personal things, the photographs, their perfumes, everyday objects that have energy for the curing.
Each pursues a different goal. Some look for love. Others have health problems. Jose Galan lost everything when his business failed. Jose comes from Paita on the coast. For years, he struggled to make a living. Finally, he got a bank loan to open a bakery.
We were making an average of 600, 700 breads when we first began. 600, 700 breads daily, in the morning just for breakfast. But then it began to go down, down, down.
Then, disaster. Jose claims jealous neighbors wrecked his ovens.
Look, this is what happened. They've done this. They opened up the oven. It burst here and it burst there, and it practically doesn't work. Because if you make a fire, it opens up and everything falls.
He believes that by taking San Pedro, he can restore his good fortune. Before they can take San Pedro, Jose and the others must purify themselves. Apprentice shamans hand out a mixture of ground tobacco and perfume for them to inhale. The effects hit swiftly and harshly.
Pick up your business for your money, your work, all these blessings. Let's stop and raise ourselves for God. All reach for better intentions to work well. High up with your name, your luck.
Now, to cleanse their bodies. The water is near freezing.
The various steps of the ritual exist in order to sacrifice oneself in the sense of purifying oneself.
Coming up, can drug-induced visions really bring peace of mind? And later, young Americans just say yes to illegal drugs. Bodies and spirits purified, the seekers are ready to meet the shaman who will guide their drug journey. He's known as El Maestro.
Everything about this experience is terribly controlled. These cultures are not being reckless with these substances. They are, indeed, with all these procedures, recognizing their great power and their great danger, and their great benefit when properly used.
The San Pedro cactus is merely another hallucinogen, without Juan Manuel. In his role as maestro, he manages the drug's effects and keeps users on course.
It has the most force in the heart of it. All my patients take it, but there are some who can't. If you don't have faith, your body won't feel it.
El Maestro is a hands-on shaman. To lead the ritual, he consumes a bigger dose than anyone. Twice a week for 47 years, he's taken vast quantities of San Pedro. He believes this takes him to a spiritual realm where he can change the lives of those who seek his help. Once he's boiled the cactus pulp into a thick broth, the ritual can begin.
The very magical idea that drugs can put us in touch with a transcendent, powerful reality that opens us up to new worlds that we didn't dream seems to be the very opposite of our own use of drugs, which is really to calm us down, to restrict our consciousness, to limit our access to what is beyond.
Its effects resemble those of lysergic acid diethylamide, LSD. Many Western countries outlaw mescaline. Peru allows its use only in religious rituals. El Maestro decides who can take San Pedro and how much. Jose takes his dose. Within minutes, the drug kicks in. Not all its effects are pleasant. Time loses meaning. The visions begin. Their spirits leave their bodies, carrying problems and worries. El Maestro says San Pedro lets him see inside each seeker, so he can pinpoint problems, and using the power of San Pedro, ease them.
When you are on San Pedro, you get powers from the mountains and the lake. It's when a person has a strong problem. With the San Pedro, you can see as though through a mirror. Like we call it here, a transmission. And then I tell them certain things, and there's clarity.
Rationalists may say that this shaman, under the power of the mescaline, is a faker and is just saying what comes to his mind. But he wouldn't be a shaman for very long if there weren't quote-unquote recovery.
During the 8-hour high, the pilgrims weave between exhaustion and exhilaration. Believers say this enhances the drug's strength. The trip ends at dawn, when the seekers can return to their lives, their faith in themselves restored.
And now we come to the power of belief. I believe I can make a better life as a shoemaker than as whatever I was before. And because I believe, with the support of the shaman, I do it.
Using the insight of San Pedro, El Maestro told Jose a curse on his house had ruined the bakery. So Jose and his wife are going to move elsewhere to grow rice.
Well, now we are content, happy, because everything is faith. We go with faith because we can't begin all over again.
Dr. Ruiz still doesn't know how San Pedro helped him overcome the tragedy of his nephew's death. But he believes in his experience and thinks that rather than condemn mind-altering drugs, governments should try to learn from cultures that have been using them for thousands of years.
I believe that this taboo shouldn't exist. There should be above all a relationship of cordiality. That is, learn from what they know, and they can learn from what we know.
Atop his mountain, El Maestro offers wisdom and guidance, plus access to a powerful drug. Other societies routinely ban such experiences, but prohibition has not eliminated drug use.
The drug experience is thoroughly unacceptable, yet everyone does drugs. Anyone with any resources can get any drug he or she wants.
In fact, it sometimes seems that banning drugs only makes them more attractive. What if taking a pill could allow your true self full free flight? What would you risk to have that experience? Far from the Peruvian Andes, another ritual begins. Fueled by youthful energy, thumping rhythms, and an outlaw drug whose admirers praise its capacity to break down barriers.
It's a rite of passage. but it's an illicit rite of passage.
This rite of passage is a rave, an all-night dance party. And the drug is methylene dioxymethamphetamine, better known by its initials, MDMA, or as ecstasy. In Washington, D.C., capital of a nation that claims to lead a war on drugs, thousands of young people define their culture with scenes like this. Across the world, countless ravers liken themselves to 60s-era hippies. They espouse a mantra they call PLUR, peace, love, unity, and respect. For some, a rave without ecstasy would be like the Woodstock Music Festival without acid. Ecstasy is an amphetamine compound that delivers so strong a sense of empathy it saw use in psychotherapy until 1985, when the US banned the drug after studies showed it could cause brain damage.
The research shows that this damage has occurred in experimental animals even after the administration of but a single dose.
Ecstasy has killed users, whether by overdose or misadventure, triggering campaigns to discourage its use.
There are no legitimate uses for this drug.
We are very fearful of drugs, and in our society the choice that we've made is to punish people for experimenting with them, or alternatively to give the authority over dispensing them to healers that we call physicians and psychiatrists. That's what we do in order to control the negative effects of those drugs.
The controls don't always work. Use of marijuana and cocaine among American teens has stabilized, but ecstasy use is soaring. Among those surfing the waves of sound at this rave, James.
There is something truly powerful about being in a group of people that move to the same rhythm.
James is a veteran of the rave scene. For him, the experience goes deeper than the drug.
I work in Georgetown in Washington, D.C. at a store/website that specializes in dance music for DJs. Primarily, we sell vinyl records.
James is a DJ and music producer.
Music is my life. It's really the central focus of almost everything I do. If I'm not at my job figuring out how to tell people about this music, I'm at home figuring out how to make my own music evolve.
Long before his first ecstasy experience, James weighed the pros and cons of the drug many users call E. He'd been raving for 6 years.
The ecstasy, it was an unknown quantity, and I knew a lot of people were taking it, but I just was not comfortable with the level of research that had been done about it.
That first time shimmers in his memory. As the crowd filled the dance floor, speakers boomed out a mix that put a legendary speech to a thunderous beat.
And all of a sudden, Martin Luther King's voice comes in and he speaks this, "I have a dream." And after every single sentence he spoke, where there was a pause in his thought, the whole room erupted in these screams, the whole room, these like primal screams from the belly, like people throwing back their heads, and the sound of of 300 people just screaming, "Yes, I believe this." Getting all emotional, was absolutely overwhelming. And that moment there, that was just like the truth. That was it, that's what we searched for. That took 300 people being at the same place at the same time, affirming this beautiful vision of humanity.
The moment still echoes in his life. A reminder of ecstasy's power.
Psychologically powerful drugs can be really useful tools for self-discovery, for spiritual connection, if they're respected as such, as something that has that potential.
Critics say ecstasy's spiritual effects are not enough to outweigh the dangers the drug poses to users.
Danger is a word used to mobilize public opinion against the druggies. Danger is a word that, for the drug crowd, entices them. Therefore, danger has two different meanings.
In online chat rooms and face-to-face conversations, ravers describe how their rituals convey a sublime and overwhelming transcendence. In these halls, disc jockeys serve as techno-shamans, refracting the crowd's energy.
I do think people in this community thirst for that original spiritual ritual, and that for a lot of people, that's almost what they're searching for, that reconnection with a community of people. Why I think it's really hard for us to get there is because there's very little shared mythology, shared ideology, shared truths. And I guess on some levels I'm one of those people who's searching for that.
Coming up, ecstasy users defy threats of jail time to experience the drug's sensations. And later, holding on to their ancient culture, Native Americans travel Mexico's Peyote Trail. After taking ecstasy a few times, James decided raves weren't the place to use the drug. He wanted to have a more intimate experience. Tonight, he's en route to do just that.
We don't have guides. We don't have anyone to help us get the most out of these substances. It seems only in modern Western culture that similar rituals are treated as entertainment. The same ritual without a spiritual foundation, I personally feel is probably not quite as valuable.
An hour north of Washington, in Baltimore, Maryland, James joins a group creating rituals of its own at the loft of their friend, Rainier. They'll relax and listen to music.
Hello, welcome.
All are veterans of the rave scene and ecstasy experiences. Tonight, 4 of them will take E. Possession of the drug could mean a year in federal prison. Instead of fretting about jail, though, James and his friends focus on the sensation of the capsules melting on tongue.
My conscience is yelling at me.
MDMA takes effect in about half an hour. The drug spurs brain cells to release serotonin, a body chemical that governs mood, appetite, and sleep patterns. Released in the quantities MDMA triggers, serotonin creates a powerful high that's overtaking James and his friend.
This side is taking E.
You know that when you start gagging, you're about to start going, So I start feeling anxious, I start to tingle, and then you just...
Yeah, that's
you
what you
feel
the skin sensation.
like you weigh 10 pounds. Oh my God.
Taking MDMA, well, it's an all-encompassing experience.
Great vibe, great vibe. Shh. I swear to you, like, shh. I'm like, okay, the world just kind of took a different slant. I'm a more evolved person.
There is a sense of openness and receptiveness and willingness to accept things for what they are, for people for who they are.
She smiled at me. She's smiling at me. Why did she smile at me? Some people love it.
You also really can see what is beautiful inside a person.
People by nature are insecure in a lot of ways. What ecstasy was designed for was the purpose of being a tool to remove that insecurity, to remove that inhibition, and to explore things more freely.
But before I did E, I couldn't talk to people like that. I couldn't just go up to people, and it totally helps you become socially evolved.
Socially evolved. That's a very good way of putting it. I love hanging out with you.
Yeah, the definition of that word.
Emotionally, it's a freeing experience. It allows you to look at yourself and other people very objectively.
After my first time doing E, it was like an interesting way to connect with other people that I had never met before.
It's sometimes hard to make really, really good friends, but then, you do ecstasy together, and all that comes out, and all your inhibitions come out, and all the walls come down. All too often, people argue, and their egos get in the way. And when you're on ecstasy, that ego is gone.
Physically, the sensation of touch increases in its immediacy. You see people massaging each other, or you see people giving big, long hugs, because all of a sudden they're so much richer, sweeter.
But what does ecstasy do to someone on a dance floor among hundreds of sweating bodies?
If the music's pumping loud enough and you happen to be on ecstasy, if you lie close to the speakers, the whole ground vibrates, and that can be an overwhelming sensory experience.
The drug and the setting make for a mind-bending cocktail, driven by BPMs, beats per minute. Yesterday's disco rhythm has been harnessed to a spiritual high. Rave music's bass lines race at 130 to 150 beats per minute, roughly as fast as the heart of a fetus beats in the womb. And able to alter consciousness as a chant or mantra does.
That can be a catalyst for realizing, on some level, all human beings are locked into the same rhythms. But without anyone to lead the way, you can get lost, and people do get lost.
Well, there are some adventurers who challenge the taboos of their culture and see what's on the other side. All of us do that in some limited ways. Some people do it in very dramatic ways. That's one way that cultures grow. So it's a capacity that we want to preserve. On the other hand, it's a way of destroying culture because it destroys the very landmarks of how we put the world together. And so people do that at great peril to themselves socially.
In dismantling the controls society imposes, drug users may see their own lives disintegrate. The data aren't complete, but evidence suggests that E permanently alters the brain, impairing the ability to feel happiness. Users admit the aftermath of taking ecstasy can be depression. Ravers face other risks. Black market pills can contain substances even more dangerous than ecstasy. With no shaman guiding the experience, they could be gulping chemical garbage.
In some cultures, without having a shaman intermediary, the taking of a drug substance would be irrelevant. It would be a waste.
Kamari Clark is an anthropologist at Yale University.
There are a lot of consequences if one isn't in control and acting out of consciousness.
James says he knows MDMA isn't a chemical toy.
I do see people who treat it lightly and don't respect the gift it can be, the power of transformation it has. For me, it comes back to respect. It's dangerous when you think you can do ecstasy every weekend for the rest of your life, and there are not going to be some really serious consequences to that.
Focusing on the perils posed by drugs, contemporary societies ban them, but prohibition keeps people from learning about and from these substances. What if you thought a drug could sit you at the table with God? Would you take it? And would you share it with your children? Outsiders call it peyote. The Huichol, an indigenous tribe in western Mexico, call it hickory, and they teach their children to use it. Most societies outlaw this consciousness-altering drug, but Mexico permits the tribe to use it as the central experience of their religion. The Huichol believe peyote leads to the spirit world. To get there, they must set out on a pilgrimage, one that starts with a legend. At the dawn of time, a Huichol hunter stalked a blue deer. He shot straight, but the animal fled across the desert. In its tracks, cactus plants budded.
They were hunters, and they killed their own god. Their own god blessed them, nevertheless, by turning into a peyote cactus.
Ever since, Huichol have visited this sacred desert, collecting peyote. It is harvest season. Tomorrow, the tribe will travel to the distant desert. Parents explain the journey to children, who will taste the holy cactus for the first time. First, they must fast, and tonight, as with every night on the road, they will go without sleep. Before entering the land of the blue deer, minds and bodies must be ready for the sacred trip. Their quest takes the Huichol far from their homes in the remote Sierra Madres, to the Chihuahua Desert in western Mexico. The Huichol were using peyote long before the beats and hippies made it briefly fashionable and established a peyote culture in the U.S.
It's legendary because it's a natural hallucinogenic. It's a natural, they used to say this, expander of mind.
Mexico bans casual use of peyote, but does allow the tribe its rituals. Mario, 17, balances between cultures. He's growing up in the modern world, but he's also making his first peyote pilgrimage. His father, Mauricio, will teach him to use and respect the sacred cactus.
I followed my father when I was young. He showed me where the peyote grows. But then he died when he was 50. Now I'm taking my son for the first time, so he'll learn about our sacred ways.
People everywhere don't classify drugs in the same way. In a given ritual context, the thing that we call drug is simply a way to facilitate a new shift in stages or states of being. But it's not the religion itself, not at all.
The tribe's shaman, Don Jesus, hopes to pass on this tradition and all its rituals to his children, 7-year-old Francisco and baby Jesusita. The Huichol once made the journey on foot, a trip that took 45 days. Now they live in a world of property lines and must travel by highway. Many leaving their village for the first time. The modern world's concrete and machinery are sending them back in time. A journey already begun in their minds. With 21 people, quarters are close, but this is all part of their rite of passage. Discomfort is the pilgrim's payment for a glimpse of God.
The Huichol make a journey, make a pilgrimage, which is itself a narrative. First, they suffer. They become victims, ritual victims.
After 2 days, the Huichol reach the outskirts of the sacred desert of Chihuahua. They stop first at a sacred lake to pay respect to nature before entering the land of the gods. To see with spiritual eyes, first-time pilgrims don blindfolds. For countless generations, this body of water has been a key way station on the Huichol's pilgrimage. The sight of the waters has always inspired awe. Now, it also brings sadness. Ranchers drain the lake to water cattle, imperiling the sacred site. Once vast, this holy place has shrunk to a puddle. The pilgrims move on with a profound sense of loss. A foundation of their beliefs is withering away. Three days into the journey, they reach their destination. More cacti live here than anywhere else on Earth. Youngsters must pay attention. Someday, they will be leading. The shaman knows this is the place. Here the peyote buttons grow. Pure in mind, chastened in body, the pilgrims prepare to taste the food that summons the gods. Many religions have initiation rites that call for fancy clothes. To celebrate the day, little Francisco wears a brand new outfit. These children will enter the tradition of further bonding with parents and tribe. A new generation of Huichol is about to experience the mysteries of peyote. With symbolic arrows, the Huichol reenact their creation story. In this ritual, the cactus achieves godhood, the incarnation of the mystical blue deer. The Huichol hunt as if for a wild animal. Replaying a myth dating to the start of time, the pilgrims track their prey. The Huichol believe only the pure of mind can see its new form. The legend lives. Once again, the deer transforms itself into the peyote cactus. Coming up, parents initiate their own children in religious drug rituals. The Huichol pilgrims easily find the first peyote buttons, perhaps heralding a good crop. Though they gather a year's worth of peyote, the Huichol treat the land with care. They know it takes these slow-growing succulents 4 years to get as big as a dime.
The land of the blue deer is the sacred to these people. That's why the Huichol are careful in, quote-unquote, harvesting the root of the cactus.
The harvesters leave enough root that the plants can regenerate. In his father's footsteps, Jose Luis quickly learns the art of gathering buttons, along with the art of being Huichol.
My son is learning the songs and legends of our people. We are not going to live forever. As soon as one grows older, one dies. But your path continues through your children. That is how we live on. And that is why I bring him as a child, to learn from the land.
Not everyone has such respect. The Huichol have competition for peyote buttons, travelers from other countries who seek the cactus for pleasure, not worship. Once rich with the sacred cacti, the desert is being picked clean of peyote. Overharvesting threatens the pilgrims' heritage. The desert has shared its bounty. It's time to give thanks. The shaman blesses the pilgrims. Fathers and sons receive the first dose. As their parents did, adults share the peyote with their children.
It seems to me the question of parents teaching their children to take peyote is not a question of whether or not parents ought to instruct children in religious mysteries. Of course they should. In this highly ritualized fashion, the object of all of these constraints and controls on it is not to be reckless with it, to understand that it has deep and magical power that has to be very respectfully treated.
The buttons taste harsh and bitter. True visions demand that the pilgrims chew long into the night. The peyote takes hold. Their senses send them on a journey, not across the land, but inside their heads. Guided by the shaman, they enter the spirit world and encounter their god.
A god is by definition transcendental, unseeable, unknowable, ineffable. They, via the peyote, which is simply a catalyst, they speak to the god speaks to them, the god is no longer that which is to be feared.
The path of peyote is not a boulevard of cheap thrills. The ritual recollects the creation of the world, a time of beauty and peace. Their offerings have pleased the deer god. Until they return for the next harvest, he bestows his blessing. While some cultures find them valuable, many nations suppress peyote, ecstasy, and kindred drugs. To societies steeped in rationalism, drugs that transport more than treat seem a threat.
Consciousness is about the most important human possession there is. It's not really going to ever be the case that cultures simply are indifferent to drugs because of their impact on that thing which is so important to us, which is our consciousness.
Drugs that alter consciousness can damage us, a strong incentive to contain and control those experiences. But some say cultures that choose prohibition may deny themselves potential benefits.
We always lose whenever we impose taboos and restrictions, but the conundrum is that we need taboos and restrictions in order to order and classify the world in which we live. So we always lose and we always gain.
Even societies that embrace the drug experience impose gatekeepers who limit access to the visions and guide those who dare to embrace the taboo.